Welcome to Cheshire Corners. I'm Sebastian Coco, and I'll be your host as we trip through the looking glass. Thanks for coming back to the What Is mini-series, where we talk all about a specific psychedelic substance each episode. Today we're talking about ayahuasca, and specifically the larger concept of an ayahuasca brew, not just the DMT inside of it. If you haven't yet, make sure to check out what are psychedelics, what are magic mushrooms, and what is LSD, because as always, we'll be building off of knowledge around serotonin and plant alkaloids that would take too long to recap every episode. And please guys, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It only takes a second, it's totally free, and seriously helps us out. Without further ado, let's dig into the question at hand. What is ayahuasca? Notice I mentioned DMT just a second ago. Every single one of these studies I'm about to cite, all looking at ayahuasca, mention DMT as an important active ingredient. However, this is what is ayahuasca, not what is DMT. We're going to be looking at ayahuasca as a holistic brew and cultural institution, not just analyzing the most active ingredient and calling it a day. That being said, DMT is extremely important and needs to be talked about at length, and we'll be devoting the next episode of the What Is mini-series exclusively to DMT. But before then, let's dig into the botanical brew that made DMT famous in the first place. Ayahuasca. The question, what is ayahuasca, is actually relatively straightforward. Ayahuasca is a psychedelic drink traditionally brewed by Amazonian cultures with local psychoactive plants that is a staple in ritual and therapeutic practices. The origin of ayahuasca is lost to prehistory, as we don't have good carbon-dated evidence to pinpoint its earliest use like we do mescaline and psilocybin. Many groups entrenched in the history of ayahuasca use have their own explanations, with mestizo ayahuasqueros in Peru saying the knowledge of the brew came directly from the plant teachers themselves. Interestingly enough, the word ayahuasca means next to nothing to the cultures that originated its use, with each of these indigenous peoples calling the drink by their own name for it, and as such, more than 40 different terms have been recorded that reference the ayahuasca brew. The term ayahuasca that is most common today is a remnant of the Incan Empire's official language. Huasca or Huasca, most scholars agree, means rope, but Aya has been interpreted as both a reference to death and a reference to human spirituality. The brew is traditionally prepared by boiling or soaking the bark and stems of Banisteriopsis caapi alongside a psychoactive plant ingredient, most commonly a plant of the genus Psychotria, particularly P. viridis, the leaves of which contain DMT. DMT is not orally active, so eating these leaves wouldn't do you any good. They need to be ingested alongside a monoamine oxidase, or MAO, inhibitor in order to make sure your stomach is able to process that DMT. Hold on to MAO inhibitors for a second. We're going to talk about them more later. Remember, the use of these specific plants was standard to the Amazon basin. Modern studies have found European ayahuasca analogs that use botanical alternatives such as Mimosa tenuiflora and even contain trace amounts of psilocin. And even in the Amazon basin, different cultures have different standards for the plants that they use when brewing ayahuasca. In Ecuador, Diplopteris cabrerana has been recorded to be used in place of Psychotria viridis, and in Peru, a virtual pharmacopoeia of plants can be found in the mixture depending on the intent of the ceremony, including some that bear nicotine and other natural stimulants. When you delve into the question, what is ayahuasca, only more questions come up. Most specifically, if DMT isn't actually an active chemical that can make it into your bloodstream and to your brain when digested on its own, how is it possible for the alkaloids present in Banisteriopsis caapi to make DMT digestible? That's because of harmala alkaloids, the most notable of which are harmine, harmaline, and tetrahydroharmine, and they act as monoamine oxidase or MAO inhibitors. MAO inhibitors are key enzymes present in the outer mitochondrial membrane of all cells and serve to deaminate key amino acids, meaning that these enzymes remove the amino group from these molecules. MAO-A is specifically important when talking anything brain science, as it is associated with the deamination of neurotransmitters, and the inhibition of MAO-A is a pharmacological mechanism that some of today's most popular medicines use to treat mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. When ayahuasca is ingested and DMT is rapidly absorbed into the digestive tract, harmala alkaloids act as strong MAO-A inhibitors and immediately interact with DMT in order to prevent extensive degradation in the stomach. Because the structure of the DMT is preserved, it can actually make its way to the brain where, just like all other classic psychedelics we've talked about, it activates 5-HT2A receptors, and these are most specifically associated with its psychoactive effects. After ayahuasca is ingested and the 5-HT2A receptors are firing, users typically experience immediate symptoms of increased introspection, positive mood, and altered visual perceptions. And short-term data suggested that ayahuasca use improved planning abilities and inhibitory control, alongside showing significant potential as an antidepressant and anti-addiction medication. Long-term ayahuasca use in a controlled and respectful manner was associated with higher positive perception of healthy lifestyles, with 56% of the study population actually reporting that their use of prescription medications was reduced as a direct result of their ayahuasca use. While there are some case studies linking psychotic-like episodes to ayahuasca use, these incidents are incredibly rare and usually occur in patients with a personal or family history of a mental disorder related to psychotic symptoms, such as schizophrenia, and patients with a history of these types of serotonergic, psychosis-related mental disorders should likely avoid psychedelic use altogether. Well, that's a basic overview on what is ayahuasca and a little bit about what it can do, but why do we actually care? Beyond the data suggesting how much patients actually personally benefit from its use, the concept and proliferation of ayahuasca is incredibly important to understand from a traditional versus Western perspective. Even though it originated in the Amazon basin, ayahuasca use has been reported as far away as Europe and Asia, and the ramifications of globalizing a specific cultural practice in this way are very present today. Complaints of psychedelic tourism ruining delicate cultural institutions are already flying, with ayahuasca ceremonies playing a central role in these debates. It's been carefully recorded that the practice of drinking ayahuasca comes with a litany of dietary restrictions and related taboos. What happens when ayahuasca is consumed by Westerners who have no context for these circumstances? And if you haven't been raised or trained in a culture that traditionally prepares ayahuasca, what are the dangers of attempting to make the mixture yourself, or of consuming someone else's homemade brew? Figuring out what is ayahuasca, both in the traditional sense and the form it's taking across the globe today, is key to understanding how we can safely use the substance in the best circumstances possible. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's easy, free, and really helps us out. And as always, don't get psyched out. Alright.